And I'm alone again. And hello, this is episode number 52. I screwed up a little bit in the beginning because I forgot to unmute myself in Zoom. Thank you, live audience, which I have in YouTube, who helped me to unmute myself. But unfortunately, I didn't notice it in the beginning. But okay, let's proceed. So we have PG upgrade, which is kind of a very good tool to upgrade. Like in ancient time, we needed to dump restore our database to perform a major upgrade. But now we have PG upgrade, great. But actually, we discussed it with Michael some time ago. We had an episode about minor and major upgrades. We discussed high-level problems we usually have and so on. But let me discuss particular problems when you use PG upgrade to run major upgrades. So problem number one, if you have a huge database and some significant traffic to it, and you want to avoid downtime, there is a well-known idea, let's use logical to avoid downtime. Of course, if you use PG upgrade as is, it will take significant time. And there is another recipe described in documentation to use -k or --link option, which significantly speeds up the process because we switch to using hard links. Most of files in PG data is not going to change during upgrade, so hard links help. But some people say, okay, we don't want even some minutes, like it will take usually up to 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on cluster size and additional steps you perform. They say, we want to do it faster. Let's involve logical replication. And here we have a couple of dangers. First of all, if cluster is really huge, it's very challenging to initialize logical replica. Because when you initialize it in traditional way, it's fully automated. If you just create a replication subscription and start subscription to new empty cluster, if it's already new Postgres, great, it will be done automatically, but you will find it very challenging for really big databases, like, for example, 5, 10, 15 terabytes under some significant load, like at least like thousands or a few dozens of thousands of TPS. And why is it so? Because initialization at logical level involves basically a kind of dump restore process, which takes long. And also it affects the health of the source cluster, which currently is your main cluster under use, right? And before Postgres 16, which is not yet released, yesterday we had only beta 2, and also the branch rel 16 stable was stamped, meaning that we're already close to release, but still not there. And Postgres 16 will allow you to logically replicate from standbys. Right now it's not possible, so it's possible only from primary. But even if it's from standby, the problem will remain. So you affect how auto-vacuum workers work, and they cannot remove freshly dead tuples because you're still taking data, and you need that snapshot. So after the moment you started, if some tuples became dead, auto-vacuum cannot remove that tuples, and you will see in logs that some number of tuples are dead but cannot yet be removed. Why? Because we still hold snapshot, because we're still initializing our replica. And sometimes it's even not possible to finish. Like and load on the primary, you produce a lot of load. So it's kind of difficult, and I actually didn't do it myself, never. I just know it feels not right approach, but my colleagues did, and they tried, and they failed, even on smaller database, like about 1 terabyte. So how to do it better? There's a recipe. So we call it physical to logical, and it's kind of quite straightforward. We can first of all have a secondary cluster. I'm going to use Patroni terminology here. So we have secondary cluster with its own standby leader. They are all standbys, but one of them is leader because we have cascaded replication. So standby leader is replicating using streaming replication from main primary, and then it has its own standby nodes, cascaded replication. And Patroni can do that. You can say I'm having secondary cluster here, so it shouldn't have a real primary, but it has its own standby leader. This streaming replication is asynchronous, normal streaming replication, and then we create a slot and we create publication on the source, on the primary, as I said. And once we do it, walls are starting to accumulate on the primary more and more. If we keep this slot unused, we know we will be out of disk space on the main primary, which we are using right now. So we should move fast, or we should have a lot of disk space. And of course, it's not good to spend a lot of time accumulating this lag, basically, right? If no one is using this slot, we have LSN position. We know LSN position when we create a slot using SQL approach. You can do it in two ways, but SQL approach is fine as well here. So you say select PG, create replication slot, it will return you LSN. So and slot is at this position. Good. Now we have a trick. On our future primary, which is currently standby leader, we just adjust configuration. We say, instead of replicating everything using physical replication, we have a setting which is called recovery target LSN, and we put this LSN from the slot position. We put it right there, restart server, and let it catch up and pause. There is another setting, I don't remember the name, which says which action to perform when something like this achieved. Like, okay, we achieved this LSN and we pause. Great. So, and not replicating at physical level anything additionally. By the way, we found that if you use wall shipping here, sometimes it replaces slightly more than needed. So we need to explore this probably. But if you use streaming replication, this works really good. So, and we can, at this point, we can shut down. And here we have trick. Here we have problem number 2. So first of all, this already allows us to switch from physical replication to logical. And this is how we can very quickly initialize logical replica based on physical replica in cases when you need all of database or majority of tables to be replicated. Of course, with logical, you can replicate only some tables, and this recipe is not good in this case. If you need only, like, for example, 10% of all your tables. But if you need everything, and in the case of PG upgrade, in the case of a major upgrade, we need everything. In this case, this physical to logical recipe is really good. So, but we have now the second problem here. First problem we already solved, right? We instead of regular insertion, we use physical replica and switch from physical to logical. By the way, when we create a slot, when we create a subscription, not a slot, when we create subscription, we need to say explicitly that we already have everything. So we just need CDC. Logical consists of 2 stages. First, 2 steps. First is full initialization. So bring snapshot of data. And second is CDC, change data capture. So replaying changes from slot. So in case of physical to logical conversion, we don't need the first one because physical already brought us everything. And how we initialized replica, physical replica doesn't matter. It could be PG base backup, it could be PG backrest or WAL-G fetching whole database from backups. It could be cloud snapshots or anything else. So now we have second problem. This problem is quite interesting, and it says like it feels like this: if you first initialize logical replication and then shut down your logical replica, run PG upgrade on it, and start again, there are risks of data corruption. This is quite interesting, and it was discussed in Hacker News, in Hackers mailing list a few months ago. There is a discussion. I'm going to provide a link in description. So it's quite kind of interesting. So when we run PG upgrade, it doesn't play with logical well. Instead of this, let's just swap the order of our actions. We know that our future primary is at position of the slot, but instead of starting to use logical replication right away, let's postpone it, and first let's run pg upgrade. We run pg upgrade. We start our new cluster which has all data, and we know it was frozen at the position we need. It's synchronized with the slot, right? So we started. It has timeline 1 or 2, so it's kind of like fresh database. And then we can, after it, we can start using the logical replication, create subscription, and of course during pg upgrade, the slot will accumulate some lag, right? Because LSN position is frozen, it's behind. So of course, pg upgrade should be done as fast as possible. For example, involving hard links, the option -K. In this case, it will take a few minutes. We know that a new cluster after pg upgrade, we don't have statistics, so we need to run analyze. I would say it's not a good idea to run analyze right away. We can start logical first and run analyze logical subscription first, start this CDC process, change data capture process. And in parallel to run analyze and using many workers, for example, vacuum db -- analyze -j, some maybe even number of process cores we have. And if disks are very good, SSD and so on, it should be fine. And during that, we already the logical replication already working. It's catching up. We don't have this risk of data corruption discussed in hackers mailing list. And for logical, of course, all tables should have primary key or replica identity full. If we have primary key, we don't need actually statistics to work with primary key. So all inserts, updates, deletes will work even before we collect statistics. So we can run analyze in parallel or slightly later and so on. It will be fine. We just shouldn't run regular user queries on this on node yet until we collect statistics. So in this case, this is a good recipe. But there is another problem, and this problem is not only related to this recipe involving logical. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that a couple of weeks ago, a new tool was published, which is written in Ruby, and it allows to automate the process involving logical and run Postgres major upgrade using logical. It was discussed on Hacker News, it was discussed on Twitter, and at least 5 people sent me this tool because they know I'm interested in Postgres upgrades. Thank you all. But I think it's not. This tool is okay. I think I briefly checked it and I didn't see this physical to logical conversion. So it means that if you have a really big database, probably this tool won't work well. And second, I'm not sure the order of actions. So you should be careful, because if order of actions logical first, then upgrade and continue logical, there are risks of corruption. So I would encourage you to check this, explore this, and communicate with author. Maybe I will do it as well. It's kind of very tricky parts and dangerous parts. That's why I call this episode PG Upgrade Tricky and Dangerous Parts. So finally, let's discuss the final, maybe the most dangerous part, because it's not only about logical. It's about anyone who uses PG Upgrade. Even like, okay, most of people use with hard links with option -K right now, or --link. But it's not even about that. The problem is related to how we upgrade standby nodes. And Postgres documentation describes the recipe involving rsync. It says, okay, once you upgraded the primary, to upgrade standbys, which already have some data, just run rsync to eliminate deviation we accumulated during running PG upgrade. And that's it, right? It's quite obvious. But the problem is, if you really want to minimize downtime, in case of without logical downtime, usually a few minutes. We want to achieve a few minutes, even if cluster is huge, many terabytes. We want just a few minutes of downtime. If you want to minimize it, you cannot use rsync in best mode. A best mode for rsync would be checksum. So rsync checksum would check the content of all files, but it would take a lot. Maybe it's easier to recreate replica than just wait until rsync checksum is working. Unfortunately, rsync is single-threaded thing. So if you want to benefit from the fact that you have fast disks and a lot of cores, you need to parallelize it somehow yourself. Maybe with GNU parallel or something like that. So it's like kind of a task. And documentation doesn't describe it. But if you just follow the documentation, it says rsync. Oh, okay. There's another option. So if you don't specify checksum, you just use rsync. It will compare two things, size of the file and modification time. It's much better, but still it's question to me, will it be reliable? But the least reliable approach is to use the option size only. So we will compare only size. And in this case, guess what documentation describes? Documentation describes size only. And imagine some table, which is quite big, say 100 gigabytes. Postgres stores tables and indexes using files, 1 gigabyte files. Many files, 1 gigabyte files. You can find them using OID of table or index, and you can see OID.1, OID.2, so many files, all of them are 1 gigabyte. So if some writes happened during your upgrade, which you are not propagated to standbys, and then you follow Postgres documentation recipe, official recipe, which is currently official, and just run rsync size only as it describes. Rsync size only will see, okay, we have blah, blah, blah .2 file, 1 gigabyte on source, 1 gigabyte on target, no difference, right? So this is super interesting because I suspect many of clusters upgraded recently, or maybe not that recently, have corrupted standbys. And we had it also with some quite big database last week. We upgraded using our logical recipe, this kind of magic and so on. And fortunately, we saw corruption on replicas, on new replicas, when we moved read-only traffic, user traffic there, and we started seeing corruption errors in logs. Corruption errors are very important to monitor, and we have three error codes. Postgres has 3 error codes you should always monitor and have alerts on which. It's X00, XX000, XX001, XX002. This is the very bottom of the error code page. In documentation, you can find this. And the last 3 lines, this is the most, like, this should be, you should have alerts on this, definitely. But funny thing, during major operations, such as major upgrade, you probably silence all alerts. So you need to have manual checks as well of logs. And this is how we found out, like, accidentally we were checking logs and saw a couple of lines, and we saw this. Oh wow, it looks like corruption. And then we found out that all standbys, we had like maybe 5 standbys, have for some files, 1 gigabyte files, have slightly different content rather than new future primary. We rolled back, so fortunately no data loss, nothing like that happened. So we had only a few errors, like 30 maybe errors or so for user traffic, and that's it, which is great. But then I started to think, this is official recipe. And the documentation, this recipe, how to perform upgrades, it mentions that you should check with PG control data, you should check last checkpoint position. when you stop standby and primary on the future cluster, new cluster. But it says like something like they might have differences if for example, you stopped standbys first, or standbys are still running, something like that. But it doesn't say that you shouldn't proceed if you see difference, first of all. And it doesn't mention, like, right now documentation is very, very uncertain about the order of how we should stop servers and how we should proceed with this dangerous rsync size only. So that's why I'm thinking many clusters were upgraded like that. And if you don't have monitoring of corruption, probably you still have corruption on standby nodes. It sounds very dangerous. I wrote to hackers yesterday to the mailing list, and Robert Haas already admitted that this recipe looks not right. It should be improved. But let's discuss how to do it better. Thinking how to do it better, talking to guys and to Andrei Borodin as well, checking some interesting slides. Standby leader, our new primary, which was already upgraded before upgrade. If we keep it running, and when we keep running also all standbys, and then we shut down primary, but don't shut down all its standbys, meaning that we need to disable auto failover, such as Patroni, to put it to maintenance mode. We shouldn't allow auto failover to happen in this case. But the idea is we keep standbys running and allow them to fully catch up all legs. When you shut down some server primary, wall sender has some logic to make attempt to write everything to standbys to send all changes before shutting down. And then we also can involve PG control data. So the idea is let's keep standbys running. We check also with PG control data checkpoint position, which is good. Then we upgrade primary, and then probably we still keep running standbys. And then probably one by one, we shut one down, do rsync, or probably shut all of them down and rsync in parallel with all nodes. And this recipe actually I saw in Yandex Mail presentation, and I learned yesterday that this recipe with some work was done from some work was coming from the guys from Yandex Mail in the past related to the use of hard links and this rsync snippet and so on. But I think it's super important to ensure that standbys received all changes from primary, and if they didn't, probably you will have corruption. Actually, that's it. I hope it was interesting, dangerous enough. Dangerous, I mean, the lesson here is definitely have monitoring and alerting for corruption errors, XX001, 001, 02, these three errors. Probably involve some additional checks, for example, using check. We also, my colleagues learned that check also found corruption on replicas if you run it, because there are deviation between files in index and files in data. And then also when you run PG upgrade, the safest, I think, is just to initialize the replicas. If you can afford it, just re-initialize it from scratch, avoiding this. But if you cannot afford it, at least be very careful with this risk of deviation, right? Or maybe run rsync without data size only option, because this size only options definitely doesn't. I cannot guarantee that without this option, with default behavior of rsync, when it checks size and modification time, you will be fine. I cannot say yet. So I think some work should be done. And if you have ideas, please join the discussion on the hackers mailing list, which I started yesterday. So yeah, let me check a couple of questions I have in chat, because it's a live session. Are we expecting to have modification and official documentation to ensure safer upgrades in all means? Well, Postgres is open source. You can propose your own modification. I'm still thinking. I have questions here more than answers. Once I have some answer, I'm definitely going to propose if I have something, some idea how to improve. But I guess we should documentation should be changed for all Postgres versions. Yes. So okay, thank you so much. It was some strange episode again, and next week I hope Michael is returning and we will have an anniversary 1 year for our podcast. Thank you so much. Subscribe, share in your social networks and working groups where you work with your colleagues who are also interested in Postgres, and send us comments with your feedback and ideas for future. Thank you. Bye.